fun to our first adventure of 2023. I am so excited for this opportunity to bring parents and educators together while we have our learners learning with Fernando, the community guy, on the Outschool platform. And here with me to kick us off is our founder and head of Outschool, Amir. And Amir is going to kick us off with some opening remarks.
Thanks so much, Erin, and thanks everyone for joining. I'm so excited that we're at the start of adventure, and I'm especially excited to welcome you all today because this is the first time that we've brought learners, parents, teachers, and Outschool staff together in this way to learn and celebrate at the same event. And that is so exciting to me because the work that we do in service of learners is collaborative and involves each of us playing our roles. So it's great that while we have opportunities together, our teachers, our learners together, to all gather together in this way makes it special for me. And of course, we work in such a human domain, teaching our kids and trying to prepare them as best we can for the future. That again, this type of connection I find really inspiring, and I hope you do too. And with this event, we want to kick off the year right and intentionally take a step back to think about what we've accomplished together in the past year, as well as what we're looking forward to accomplishing in 2023. And we hope you get that out of the sessions as part of this event. I also hope that everyone will stick around for our closing tomorrow morning, where we'll get a chance to look at what you said is important to you. And we're also giving away prizes, so you definitely don't want to miss that. The prizes will include a Logitech Creator Kit, a Makey Science Kit, and some Outschool swag. Erin and I are both representing forms of Outschool swag today. No promises on exactly what the swag is, but there will be swag. Erin's pointing to one now. And also, thank you to our friends at C Homeschool, Logitech, Make, as well as Canva and Tilt Parenting for your support and making all this possible. I'd also like to say thank you to our keynote partners. We hope that you'll have a chance to sign your learner up for a class with Sila Foxlin, one of the top engineers and maker creators, who engages audiences by bringing the science of making to life on YouTube. So your kids, you won't want to miss the chance out to hang with Sila for free, so make sure you enroll in that class, and there's still time to sign up and invite a friend. But with that, and with those thanks, I will now hand off to Julie Bogart from Brave Writer, who I'm very excited that we get to hear from. And I'll pass you back to Erin to introduce Julie.
Oh, thank you so much for that welcome, Amir. And yes, I'm going to bring Julie up here in just a moment. And for those of you wanting to know more about what Amir was talking about with these learner community events, I dropped a link, and we'll be dropping the link throughout our time for you to check out what's happening on the Outschool platform. Now, we'll hear from Amir, so come back tomorrow as a part of our closing, and stick around today too, because I've got some water bottles and some notebooks and some Julie's books that I'm going to be giving away today. And then some more prizes like the Making Logitech will be tomorrow. So you don't want to miss that. You do not need to be present to win. If you're registered, you're going to be good to go. So thank you so much, Amir. I'll see you tomorrow. And with a great privilege to bring Julie Bogart here with us from Brave Writer. I had the opportunity to hear Julie a few years ago speak after I had been following her as a homeschooling parent with my twins. And I'm just so thrilled to have her here. So she's the creator of the award-winning innovative online writing program called the Brave Writer. She also home educated her 5 children. Ask her sometime about her son getting into college with Klingon on his transcript. She also has authored 2 books, The Brave Learner and Raising Critical Thinkers. And that one is about shaking up how we help kids be savvy in the digital world. And she has a podcast, a coaching community, and a popular Instagram account that is a lifeline for tens of thousands of homeschooling families and others around the world. So Julie, thank you so much. I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'll be back in 50 minutes.
Wonderful. Wow. Incredible to be here. Thank you so much for having me. Hello, everyone. I wanted to comment in the chats, but it's not enabled for me, but just know I read all of them. Welcome from around the world. Thrilled that you're here. Just to get started, tell me if you've ever heard of Brave Writer, either yes or no in the comments. Just want to get a sense of who the audience is before I get started. Today, we are going to talk about what it means to be a brave learner. And for many of you, you might be thinking immediately, the brave learner is going to be my child. I'm going to help my child get brave about learning. But I want to flip that on its head a little bit. Did you know that the brave learner is actually you, the parent? Whether or not you homeschool, whether or not your kids are in traditional formatted education, to lead your child in an education that not only enriches their lives and satisfies state requirements, but that drives a passion for learning, requires you to be brave in how you lead that learning adventure. It means stepping off the platform just a little bit and leaning into maybe some unconventional ways to generate enthusiasm around learning in your home. So we're going to start today. Thank you for all the comments. I can see it's a mixture. So before we jump into the presentation, I'll just let you know this. Brave Writer is a 23-year-old organization that I started back at the beginning of this millennium. We have served over 100,000 families. We teach writing and language arts through both manuals and some of our online classes and a membership community. And I will give you some ways to sign up for information if you want it at the end of this session. All right, so here we go. I'm going to present. I'm going to share my screen. Let's see here. Here we go. This is the one we want. All right, I'm assuming everyone can see that, so we're going to start with the slideshow now. So welcome to today's session called The Brave Learner. My name is Julie Bogart. So I want to start with a quiz. After all, we're talking about education, and I want to see if you can tell the difference between picture A and picture B. So I'd like you to start by telling me which of these buildings is a home. Which building is a home? Put A or B inside the chat screen. And I am guessing that you're going to get this right. I have a hunch you know which one is a home, and you're going to pick letter. Did you pick letter B? Good. Excellent. Good job. Now I'm going to ask you a trickier question. Which one of these pictures features a school? Okay. I'm interested to see what you put for this second question, because here's something I know. Homeschooling parents, a lot of times when they are looking at picking between one building and the other for school, often come up with an answer where they say, oh, I think it's both. I think school is both A and B. It's a trick question. Or they say it's B because, after all, we're homeschoolers and we do education at home. I want to challenge that assumption right now. I want to tell you that A, which is Lakota West High School, the school that is in my neighborhood for my local community, is always a school. It is never a home. And I want to challenge you that letter B, which is the building I'm in right now, my house, I'm right above the garage looking out that window, is always a home and never a school. Always a home, never a school. Why is that important? Because when we start to see letter B as a school, our brains do some really bizarre things with how we create an education at home. So I want to challenge you to hold this notion that B should forever be a home and not a school. Ready? Let's start by identifying the properties of school, and I want you to see if these traditional brick and mortar school properties really have much play at home. First of all, school has a bell schedule. You have to move from class to class, or beginning of day to end of day, or lunch or recess, based on somebody's schedule designed for you. Secondly, teachers, principals, administrators are in charge. Everyone knows it. Third, we often are confined to a stiff desk or chair. Now, in today's modern school environment, sometimes those chairs have wheels. In some classrooms, you'll find a couch. Sometimes those tables can be pushed together to create one big table. So it isn't only the old chair attached to a desk. But here's what I know about school. It's decided for you. You're told when you can sit on the couch. You're told when to combine your desks. The furniture in the room is a dictation of the teacher in charge. Learning and breaks are allocated. If you're really engrossed in learning and it's time for a break, you have to disrupt the learning and go take the break. If you are bored and done learning and need a break, you're not allowed to take one. Behavior is controlled. Whether or not you chew gum, whether or not you look at your phone, whether or not you get a snack, whether or not you get to talk to your friend who's across the room because you have something to tell her. Academic assessment is by the instructor. It is very rare in a school that a student gets to say, these are the things I'd like feedback on, and here's what I think I did well, and here's the part I'm still struggling with. Usually, we turn in our evidence of learning, and then we wait to be told what we did well, what we did poorly. Most evaluations are of finished products. In other words, if you are working on a writing project at home for homework, the only thing the teacher sees is what you turn in at the end of a journey. The teacher is not witnessing your ease or struggle, the creative way you overcame a roadblock, the limits to your skills. All they see is what you turn in. And finally, you need a hall pass to pee. So let's keep those in mind, because now we're going to talk about the properties of home. And I really want you to imagine whether or not these school properties would even do well at home. And by the way, I don't have a beef with schools. I have some children who even attended that Lakota West High School. These properties of school are designed to move groups of students through a designated curriculum over the course of 180 days. They've worked on this system, and it's one of those sort of institutional formats that mostly works for the objectives it has. If we are going to move to the properties of home, however, here's what we will find. First of all, there's no schedule. Now, I know several of you are going to tell me, we have a schedule. We get up at 9 and we're starting our education at 9:30. But here's what I know about you. If you're in the middle of a math lesson and you get a text from your spouse telling you that they got in a wreck, you're going to stop that lesson and go take care of that wreck. You might even stop the lesson to simply tell your spouse, oh, I can't get you right now. But you will interrupt a lesson for an important text. Sometimes you'll interrupt a lesson for a non-important text. I mean, am I right? Not only that, what we know about our days at home is that we're interrupted by all kinds of features that would never interrupt a teacher in school. A nursing baby, a toddler who needs to have his diaper changed, someone who needs a snack, the fact that you've scheduled the heat vac cleaning while you're doing homeschool. There is no true schedule, and your kids know it. So even when you create the pretend schedule or the routine that you want to follow, they have an internal hunch that it can be disrupted. They don't feel that way at school. You can be yourself at home. You don't prepare yourself with a certain presentation of self where you're controlling your behavior to fit in with the constraints of a classroom. You're allowed to get comfortable. How many homeschoolers wear pajamas during the day? How many of them show up in yoga pants if you're the mom? And in fact, if you have kids who are in traditional school and you are wanting to promote learning at home with homework, think about adopting these properties. Let your child get comfortable. Let them be themselves. Don't be so rigid on what time of day they do their homework. Help them have a home experience of learning. You can attend to your personal needs. If you're the kind of kid who needs to get up repeatedly to refill their bottle of water because that helps you concentrate, do it. If you're the kind of child who needs to wear earphones and listen to music while doing math, test it. We can take experiments and risks because education at home is tailored to the individual, not the entire class. You get to eat and pee when you want. I mean, how great is that? That's good for parents too, by the way. We work from a role of observer, not evaluator. So if you think about that student who's doing a writing project at home, the parent sees the struggle or the ease. The parent sees whether the child's handwriting is coming to them naturally or they need more support. The parent is seeing whether the child put in a lot of effort or did a slipshod job just to get it over with. The parent knows the level of learning happening in a way that a teacher can never know. And finally, learning at home is about a process, not a product. So incremental growth is much easier to support. Your child doesn't have to finish the project if they've run out of steam. You can say, you know what, we got a lot of good out of that. We're going to circle back and try this project again in 6 months when you have more stamina built up so that you can complete it. That's the benefit of being the parent director of your child's learning. Now, I want you to know I had a fantasy when I was first teaching homeschooling to my kids. I imagined that it could be all very natural. My child would trot down the stairs, hop in a beanbag chair, sit in a sunny window, and whip through a math rap, for times tables or adding and subtracting. And of course, that little fantasy of my child in a pool of light, learning naturally, was disrupted the moment the dog barked and needed to go outside to pee, and the baby cried and needed to be breastfed, and the toddler was upset because his big sister knocked over his block tower, right? Real life intrudes on fantasies of learning all the time. So whenever you hear anyone share, whether it's me or some other educator, remember that learning at home looks a lot like everything else you've taught your kids. How to tie their shoes, how to make their beds, how to be potty trained, how to go from breastfeeding to feeding themselves. Disruption is the name of the game, and yet they learn anyway. So let's declutter the fantasy. Schooling is not always reliable to achieve our learning dream. Unschooling, the idea that we can learn naturally without a directed curriculum, is not necessarily magical. Just because you create room for learning doesn't mean your child will learn. And yet the goal of both of these is a love of learning. Isn't that what most of you want for your children? That they wouldn't just know how to learn, they'd actually love it. They'd want to do it in their free time. So enter my version of learning, what I call the enchanted education, the brave learning journey, pixie dust for your homeschool or for your learning life with your kids. Imagine a form of education that does not try to change the child or transform it into an adult, but rather provides a place where the child can flourish as a child. Thomas More, in his book, The Reenchantment of Everyday Life, reminds us that when a child is learning, it's going to look childlike, not like a mature adult training children how to pretend to be adults before they reach that age. We have a conundrum, though. The home educator or the parent will say to me, I just want a happy learner. But I know their secret agenda. What they really mean is, I want a cooperative student. In other words, happy means cooperation with my agenda. How many times has your child looked like a happy learner playing a video game? And you're thinking, well, okay, Julie, they're learning a video game, but I want them to be happy about math, right? And so what we're doing is we're saying a love of learning means happy when they're doing school subjects, not happy when they're learning. What parents want is for a child to love learning. And what they mean is they want their child to learn to love what is being taught, whether at school or at home. But here's what kids want. Kids say, I want to have fun. But what they actually mean is, I want to care. I want to care. I don't know about you, but I've watched my kids learning a new online game, and they don't always look happy. Sometimes they look flat out angry. You know why? Because they care. They say they're having fun. That's why they want to keep playing. But what they mean is, I'm invested. I'm going to crack this nut. I'm going to figure out what it takes to beat this game. This matters to me. That same level of caring can be tapped in the traditional school subjects. But here's the problem. We have spent so many years being trained in the school environment. We don't know what that looks like. What we know is the carrot and stick. I will give you a good grade if you perform well. I will punish you with a detention if you don't pay attention. But what would it look like to be brave about learning? To actually foster an environment where a child was turned on by grammar or thought math was worth learning even when it was hard. The brain research tells us this. Real learning connotes use. If something isn't going to be immediately used or applied in some manner, it won't get learned. This is by William Rhinesmith, who's an education reformer I really admire. Basically, what he's saying is, after they did the research, just because a child mastered a set of concepts for a test does not mean that the child has learned it. How many of you have that memory? You've taken a test for history, let's say. You've memorized all the information. You've gotten an A on the test. And yet 3 weeks later, if you had to take that same test, you wouldn't get an A because you didn't actually learn it. You stored it in your short-term memory for the sake of a test. What you learned was how to take a test, not the content for the test. Can you see the difference? But what happens if a child, for instance, wants to learn to sew? If you teach the child how to use a sewing machine by using a sewing machine, they're going to learn how to sew. If you teach them sewing by testing them on a bunch of information about a sewing machine, they're going to forget it a week later. They're not going to be able to actually sew. Real learning connotes use. So let's do yet another test. And I want you to look at these 3 pictures, and in the chat you can post if you like. Which one of these pictures looks like real writing to you? The first one, we have a girl in a tire swing with a cute, funny hat on and pink, high tops. Then we've got in number 2, a girl diligently doing her copy work and handwriting. And then in number 3, we have my miserable daughter. She looks fed up. Who's doing real writing? 1, 2, or 3? I'll give you a moment. All right, did you answer? It's a trick question. 1, 2, and 3 are all real writing. Here's the reason, and we'll go back and look at it again. Sure, number 1 looks really happy, or at least content, but so does number 2. The tire swing has no power, except that for some kids, it boosts their motivation to write. But if the second child, the one in the number 2 picture, is calm and is working at it and values the outcome, that's real writing too. But here's the catch. Number 3 is also real writing, and that's my miserable daughter. If I'm forcing her to write, that is an experience that she is going to encode inside of herself as, I hate this subject. I only do it because I'm forced to. These conditions make me hate writing. So what's she really learning? She's learning that writing is not worth learning. Isn't that interesting? What matters is not how the activity looks, but how the activity feels. And we only know that if we investigate with our kids. We're looking for an intersection of outcomes. We want happiness, for our children to be happy. What parent doesn't want that for their kids? But we also want them to get into college. There's my daughter Johanna showing her acceptance to Ohio State. That is such a satisfying moment for parents. We're like, hooray, we got there. That is the holy grail, this intersection of happiness that results in achievement. So how do we get there from here? We get there through what I call magic doors, the portal of entry to being interested in learning, to caring about learning, to wanting to learn. I created a tool that many of my family's students use to help them understand what I mean about loving learning. So first of all, every subject under the entire sun is the result of all those school subjects we deem so important. For instance, the microphone that I am on right now requires, for it to be built, an understanding of manufacturing, an ability to harvest raw materials, engineering to design it, mathematics to create the engineering, an understanding of math as it applies to sound and recording. Every single aspect of our lives, from the gum we chew, to the toilet paper we use, to the cooking we do in the kitchen, every bit of it comes through those school subjects. And yet for our kids, we often teach them as though that's not true. We learn math to take a test. We learn history to pass a class. We learn grammar so that we get into college. But what if we started to hook up all the subject areas with the world they live in? So imagine putting piano at the center of a page and drawing a squiggly circle around it. And we treated it like it was a country on a continent of adjacent countries that created piano. So if we look at piano, we could study history through the lens of piano. The history of the instrument, the biographies of composers, the origin of the instrument, the genres of music. We could look at math, composition, time signature, transposing, chord structure, number of keys and pedals. We could look at science, vibration, sound, the physics of the pedals and the keys, how Beethoven composed even though he was deaf. We could look at literature, musical notation, reading music, sheet music, history of musical notation. We might look at films, novels, and theater like Amadeus or the piano. We might look at biographies of composers. Perhaps we'd investigate geography, the inventor of the piano, how it spread during its era, the difference between religious music with an organ, and piano that was found in bars and pubs. All of those subjects that we care so much about suddenly take on different meaning if they are related to something our child loves. Now, I know many of you are running ahead and saying, well, I understand piano. Piano is a prestige subject. We love piano. Yeah, you can put video games at the center. There is the graphic design, the computer technology for programming that creates the game, the narrative structure of the storyline of the game, which is like literature. There is the language it was written in, the reach that it has globally, the fact that some of these games can be played in competitions where there are rules and there are teams and there are all kinds of guidelines. There is so much that we can tie to our children's interests once we start to recognize learning as creating relationships, not just mastering information. Here's the change. We want to first see the subject or the passion or the hobby differently, and then we want to stage the home to support learning using that new vision, that new way of seeing. One of the first tools that I suggest is fostering curiosity. And a lot of times we start with a child's curiosity. So I want to tell a quick story about my daughter, Katrin. She's my youngest of 5. And when she was young, she got interested in sewing because I had a sewing machine. By the way, if you want to get your kids off of a computer, pull out a sewing machine, pull out a power drill, pull out hammer and nails, pull out the KitchenAid mixer, pull out the Cuisinart. Your kids love adult tools. They want to master them. That's why they're on a computer. If you'd like them to develop some other aptitudes, pull out adult tools and give them the opportunity to learn a skill. So Katrin got interested in sewing. So initially, we just learned how to sew, just running the machine, putting your foot on the pedal like you're driving a car. It's so exciting. She would listen to Arthur, you can see it in the background, on PBS with her headphones while she sewed. Eventually, I found her a class, and she took a sewing class to learn how to quilt and how to make doll clothing. From there, she got interested in fashion because suddenly she thought about all these people who had been sewing for centuries for women. The next thing you knew, we were looking at the history of fashion. She was subscribing to magazines that talked about fashion. We built spelling lists from fashion magazines instead of buying language arts programs. She started showing a lot of aptitude for fashion. From there, she started asking me about the history of fashion and women. And when we got ready to study American history in junior high, she asked me if we could study it from the point of view of women. By then, I bought a book that had letters written by historically famous women, and we read them for a year. She began to become curious about feminism, and by the time she was in high school, had read The Feminine Mystique and multiple critical lenses of history theory around women. By the time she went off to college, she ended up majoring in linguistics because she had become so fascinated at the power dynamics of language. This started with sewing. Sometimes we just assume sewing is in an isolation booth as a fun activity, and the study of history lives somewhere else. But when we foster curiosity and we follow the rabbit trail, we actually get introduced to a deeper level of learning. I will add that when Katrin was 13, she started her own fashion blog, which lasted for a year. She ran a cookie business to fund her thrifting so that she'd have a new outfit to wear for 365 days. It improved her writing. It improved her understanding of money, economics, math, and history. Imagine that I did not know any of this would happen when she was 8 years old with a sewing machine. Sometimes, though, it's your curiosity that leads the way. When I was in grad school, I was studying human rights violations, and one of the people who I studied was Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who was a part of the resistance during World War II and a plot to kill Hitler. And so I would read these books, and one of my kids was a high school student at the time, and he came to me and he said, "I don't understand what you're studying, but I want to know more." So we started watching videos, documentaries about various human rights violations around the world, about the history of human rights and civil rights in America, and what happened in World War II. And eventually, that son got so interested in human rights. Today, he works for the UN in Central African Republic as a human rights lawyer. So you don't know where these curiosities will go, but you can foster curiosity and chase it. This all happens through what I call big, juicy conversations outside the quote school hours. This is over the dinner table, in the car on the way to the dentist, in the highways and byways of your life. So as a parent, actually pursuing with curiosity and genuine interest your child's love of a video game will lead you to more things to learn than if all you're focused on is restriction or fear. You want to collaborate with your kids' dreams. This is my son, who when he was, 10 years old, told us he wanted to go to space camp because he wanted to be an astronaut when he grew up. I, of course, said, space camp is too expensive. His father said, I think you should start a cookie business in the neighborhood and raise the money yourself. And that is precisely what they did. He had to raise $850, and in 2 years' time he did. And he went to space camp and decided he didn't want to be an astronaut. But what did he learn? He learned that when he wanted something, he could raise money to get it. And by the time he was in college, he had raised money in scholarships to become a UN human rights intern, the first undergrad to intern in this position, always before it had been graduate students. Since then, of course, he's gone on to Columbia Law School, raised scholarships, was a loose scholar in Thailand for a year, and then worked in Thailand for 5 years, and now he's in Central Africa. All that to say, I know that all sounds very impressive. Believe me, I am as shocked as the next lady. I have no idea how all that happened. The rest of my kids didn't do that. So don't take this as a template. What I'm saying is, when you lean into their vision and you support facilitating it and you stay curious and you collaborate with their dreams, cool things happen. Here is another example. I have this term that I borrowed from Jim Collins called the big, hairy, audacious goal. And with my kids, I asked them at one point, what is something that if you had all the money and time in the world, you would want to do? And when I asked my daughter, Johanna, that, she said she wanted to be in a ball like Pemberley in Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. And I thought, oh no, I don't know how we can possibly pull off a whole ball. But I was able to offer 3 things to her that all of us can offer our kids: transportation, research, and funding. I researched and found a vintage dance company in Cincinnati. I had no money, so I contacted them to ask if we could in some way participate and do a barter exchange. They said yes. They allowed us to distribute pamphlets every week in exchange for the fee. And they hosted the ball at the end of the year. So I drove my 5 kids every week to this dance class, and my oldest son and daughter got to participate in this vintage dance ball. Are either of my kids dancers today? They are not. But do you know what they learned? They learned about Jane Austen, dances from all different eras of history, which got us interested in history. They learned how to be in an adult dance class. And they also learned that if you want something, you can find a way to meaningfully exchange your labor to have it. Another value is what I call relaxed alertness. I want you to notice on the right side of your screen, my son Liam playing chess. He played chess at a very high level when he was in high school. I am very proud of this fact. In fact, aren't you all admiring me right now? You're thinking, I want to be like Julie. How do I get my kids to play chess? But here's what's really funny. He was also a massive online gamer. So much so, he ended up on a team that played in tournaments. And one time, he was literally being broadcast in South Korea because his team was in the top 10 of whatever game he played in the world. He had a passion for both. And yet, guess what? I attended every one of his chess tournaments, and I had never seen him game. And he called me on it because I was valuing the prestige subject called chess. And I was a little embarrassed about the non-prestige subject called gaming. If you see the other picture, it is my daughter, Katrin, perfecting her skill in Wii bowling. Relaxed alertness means I am paying attention and I'm glad to be here and I am learning. That skill is what your kids are learning. It doesn't matter if it's bowling online or it's chess. When we value relaxed alertness, we are valuing the tools of learning that help kids become proficient and satisfied with what they're learning. Renata and Michael Caine, in their book Brain-Based Learning, describe relaxed alertness this way. It's a state that exists in a learner who feels competent and confident and is interested or intrinsically motivated. The best context to facilitate relaxed alertness is relationship, relationship, relationship. I like to define it this way: relationship to self, relationship to the subject, and relationship to a mentor. You are that mentor, and it's up to you to facilitate a good relationship with self and the subject area. One other way that we grow a love of learning is to celebrate with learning parties. I'm kind of known for fostering something we call poetry tea time, and I will describe that in a moment. These learning parties capitalize on this Danish word hygge that means coziness. It's a feeling of comfort and light and joy that attend what they're learning. So for those harder subjects, like let's say math worksheets or handwriting, where your child struggles, couldn't you pour a cup of tea? Couldn't you light a candle to create a different feeling of the environment? That's what home offers us. Why couldn't you put the handwriting on a clipboard and let your child pet the dog while he sits in the corner of the sectional? Why couldn't you have some snack available so your child has a distraction for that stamina, right? I know for me, when I'm working on something hard, that's when the tea is ready to go because I need something to counteract the striving. I created a little practice for my own children around poetry because I was so worried they'd end up like most of the adults I knew, which is that they hate poetry. And I wanted my kids to love it. So what I did is I set the table with a beautiful tablecloth. This is not my family. This is a friend of mine and her daughter-in-law and their kids at their tea house. And so this is the picture I took. But in any case, I gathered my family. We set the table. We made tea. We had a beautiful snack and we read poetry. That's it. And do you know that practice led all 5 of my kids to have a relationship with poetry, even as adults? Because it wasn't about a product or an outcome or a test. It was about pleasure. And they came to associate poetry with the pleasure of the pause, of taking time for enjoyment of both food and snacks and the language in their mouths. There's another way to celebrate learning. I call it party school. It means that you pair what your kids are learning with a party. How many of us know that birthday parties are a kid's favorite thing? That is not the only party that they deserve in a childhood. I remember my parents threw parties that had nothing to do with birthdays. I remember my mom used to do a back to school brunch every year, and I'd invite all my friends over and we'd play games and have brunch, and she'd send everyone home with a little back to school kit of pencils and erasers, etc. I think because I grew up that way, I realized I could exploit this idea of a party for education's sake. So the left-hand picture is my son and his friends, and we threw a gold rush party when we lived in California. And it was complete with panning for gold and creating a sluice and singing Oh Susanna and eating Franks and beans. We had pinned the gold nugget on Sutter Creek, and my son drew the map. It was that kind of immersive learning. We had a medieval feast. We studied Japanese tea parties like that. These enriched the learning. Do you have to do them every week or every month? Oh, heavens no. I could manage 1 or 2 a year, if that. Collaborate with friends. Don't take it all on yourself. But even 1 party a year, just like 1 birthday party a year, is enough to create connections and memories for a lifetime. Lastly, go places. My goodness, get out of the house and into the world. We went to Italy. It took me 5 years to save the money so our family could take that epic trip. We have relatives there, which made it extra special. But you can go locally to the museums in your city. You can take your animals for walks on hikes and go even when it's cold. Get out of the house. Those immersive experiences form a foundation for why we learn anything. If it stays in a book and at the kitchen table, it stops being interesting. Bring education all the way home. Provide meaning-rich materials. Follow inspiration. Create a predictable routine. And expose your children to the world. Support moving through the magic door to that love of learning, the very thing you're hoping to promote. If you want the slides from today's presentation, you can go to this link, bravewriter.com/Brave Learner Slides, not Brave Writer Slides, Brave Learner Slides. And we will send them to you so that you can have it to remind yourself and review my notes. I also have a book called The Brave Learner, and there is a free printable guide at thebravelearner.com that you can use to sort of work through these ideas and actually design a family-rich learning life for you and your kids, whether you homeschool or not. And then finally, if you want to earn a 10% off discount code for any of our products because you came to this session, you can text Outschool to this number, 833-947-3684, or you can just go to bravewriter.com/outschool, and the link will take you to a place to enter your phone number. We are so honored to be here today and to share with you, and I've deliberately left some time for questions. So I am so thrilled that we had this opportunity. And if you have any questions for me, feel free to put them inside the chat and I will answer them live here. I'm so glad it's been helpful to you. I'm just scrolling right now. Someone wants me to be her new homeschool BFF. You certainly can. Just follow me on Instagram, Julie Brave Writer.
Thank you so much, Julie. I was watching the chats and so many great comments and aha moments from people who I know that are educators and parents. So I greatly appreciate that, and kind of put you on the spot a little earlier. Can you tell us that, we got a couple minutes here. Can you tell us that Klingon story?
Oh, I can. Yes.
Okay.
So my oldest son was homeschooled, and he spent a lot of time in his high school years studying constructed languages. And it started with Klingon, and he spent 2 or 3 years learning it. He's not a Trekkie at all. He's just very interested in linguistics. And when it was time for him to go off to college, he didn't want to go. He took a year off and just did more of his own thing. When he finally decided to go, I was concerned because I did not feel like he had the requirements that University of Cincinnati put on their website that they said were required. He didn't study like 2 years of Spanish or French or German. So when I called the admissions and I told them that he wanted to study linguistics and that he had done constructed languages and particularly Klingon, the admissions people told me, put Klingon on the transcript. That will set him apart, and the linguistics department will love that. And sure enough, that is what I did. And he did get into that program, which was fabulous. There are a few questions here. Should I try to answer one or two of them?
Yes, please do.
Yeah. Can you address neurodivergent learners who have very narrow interests? Yes, neurodivergent learners, a lot of you, I'm sure, already spending a lot of time with specialists and reading to understand them. But what we know is that when you lean into their deep passions, that's when you can really take advantage of that continent of learning, because you're finding the adjacencies, the ways that what they love connects, and that helps them over that bridge. So that's one. I mean, this is a very short answer with very limited time. Someone asked, how does Outschool support this? Well, Outschool is brilliant because so many parents are creating classes in the full range of subjects and even hobbies and passions, right? That help draw a child into more learning. So that's one of the reasons that is powerful and a great source of inspiration for kids. It is not too late to use Brave Writer materials for kids 13 and older. We have online writing classes and programs designed for high school, and they are very effective and popular. So feel free to do that. Another question, do you ever struggle with the pressure to assign importance to every learning experience? Oh, yes, please don't do that. Take notes in your journal so that you have the satisfaction. But if you start trying to manipulate a child's passions into a learning experience and they catch you, they will not do it anymore. So what you want to do is support their journey. Take notes, something we talk about in our membership community a lot, how to be a participant observer that really supports the learning journey without putting pressure on your kids to hook everything up to school. So Brave Learner Home is the name of our membership community if you're interested in that.
Well, Julie, thank you so much again for coming and for sharing. And we, again, will be giving away some of those books that Julie.
There they are.
Oh, she got them on the back side.
Yeah, there they are.
All right. And just again, thank you everyone for all your chats, all your comments and feedback. And we really appreciate it. And so, Julie, one last time, thank you so much.
Thank you. Again, if you want the slides, bravewriter.com/brave learner slides. And if you want the 10% off and join our text messaging, it's bravewriter.com/outschool. Thank you, everybody. I loved being here. Thanks for having me. And thank you, Amir, for this opportunity.